So those of you who have watched my videos for a little while now might know that I have a little bit of a thing for two-tone watches. So it may come as no surprise as today we're doing just that. What is up everyone, I'm Jason from JB Watch Mods, and today, like I said, we're building a beautiful two-toned watch. Now, we're using what I would call an Arabic dial, but every time I say that, it seems to cause a lot of controversy in the comments. So, if you know what the indices on this dial are, let me know. Some people say they're Hindu, some people say they're English. I've always known them as Arabic, so if you do know, please clear it up for me in the comment section. I would love to find out. But now, let's jump into this beautiful build. Okay, so we've got our NH35 movement and our dial. Now we need to pair the two together. So in order to do that, we need to cut a few dial feet off the back of this dial. So we'll line the dial up with the movement to see which feet need to come off. Then we can grab our side cutters and remove the unneeded dial feet. Now, if you didn't know, the movement has two small holes which accept the dial feet. And once we've got those dial feet cut off, we need to sand flat the back of the dial. I use a Dremel, but if you don't have one of these, a small file would work perfectly. Once we've got the back of the dial nice and flat, give it a good clean by using an air blower and a little bit of Rotocoat, which is basically jeweler's blue tack. The last thing you want is any metal filings dropping into that movement. Now we're ready to pair the dial to the movement. And it's as easy as lining up the dial feet with the holes in the movement and pressing it down. Just make sure that it sits nice and flat all the way around the movement. Now that our dial's fitted, we need to prepare the movement to set the hands. So to do this, pull the crown out to the time setting position and rotate the crown until the date wheel flicks over. You want to be as precise as possible with this step, so take your time as soon as you see the date wheel starting to move. Sorry for the quick interruption, but I just wanted to say if you're enjoying this video so far, you might be interested in checking out my Patreon account, which is linked in the description below. Now over there, I offer one-on-one customized support for all your watch modding needs. I even share all of my supplies to help you kickstart your watch modding journey. Now I also do a monthly watch giveaway, which you can enter for as little as $5 Australian. Now if that sounds like something you're interested in and you want to help support the channel, check out my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. Now back to the video. So pop the movement under your hand press and let's grab our hour hand. Now I use a little bit of Rotocoat to hold the hand. I find this is the best way as it doesn't leave any marks or scratches on the hand itself. Now we know the movement is at 12 AM because the date wheel has just flicked over, so we need to set our hour hand and our minute hand to 12 o'clock. And the Rotocoat is also great for cleaning any marks or smudges off your hands. Once your hour hand is set at 12 o'clock, it's a good idea to pull it out of the hand press and check for any clearance issues. I also recommend turning the movement over 2 times just to make sure that that hand is definitely set at 12 AM and that the hour hand isn't going to fail on any indices. Now we can move on to our minute hand, and this is fitted in the exact same way. Just make sure to line it up perfectly with 12 o'clock. And as we did before, make sure to pull the movement out of the hand press and check for any clearance issues with the handset. This is also the stage where you would rotate the movement 2 times just to make sure that everything lines back up at 12 o'clock and that your date wheel flicks over when it's supposed to. Now if your date changes 10 to 15 minutes either side of 12 AM, that is perfectly normal. Now onto the final and perhaps the hardest hand, the second hand. Now you can set the second hand to any position, it doesn't matter. But the key to make it easier to set the second hand is have good lighting, get the movement at eye level, and get lots of practice in. Like any skill in life, practice makes perfect. Now we've got all of our hands set and everything is operating as it should. As you can see, that second hand is sweeping beautifully. So let's move on to our next step, which is going to be preparing this dial and movement assembly to fit into the case. But to do that, first we need to remove this dummy crown stem. Now there's a small lever that appears when the crown is pushed in. That lever needs to be depressed and then you can pull the crown out. With the crown stem pulled out, now we can grab our case and remove our case back and case back gasket. But before we go too far, I'm not that happy with the way the Cyclops looks on this case. I think the dial is going to be better served with the Cyclops removed. So with that said, let's get our blowtorch out and remove this Cyclops. Now removing this is a fairly straightforward task. All it requires is applying heat directly on the Cyclops until the glue comes loose. Now normally you'll see the Cyclops pop loose or a little white film will appear under that glass. It usually takes around 30 seconds to a minute for this to happen. In this case, I saw the Cyclops pop loose, but it doesn't quite come across on camera. Once it does come loose, just use a small screwdriver to remove that Cyclops. Do not touch it as it'll be really hot. I then let it sit for about 10 minutes to cool down before applying some cleaning solution to the crystal and cleaning off any glue residue with a razor blade. Once there's no more residue left on that crystal, we can get our air blower and our lens pen and give it a final clean. Just make sure there's no dust or any smudges on that crystal because the last thing you want to find is a fingerprint underneath that crystal once your watch is put together. Once you're satisfied that it's perfectly clean, give the dial one last blowdown, then we can pair the two together. To make sure that the dial and movement are aligned correctly within the case, flip it over and make sure that the crown hole in the movement is aligned with the crown tube in the case. You can use a small screwdriver just to fine tune the placement. Now it's time to cut our crown stem to the correct length, so let's remove the crown and get our crown stem. Now I'm using a 36mm case, which means the crown stem is going to be quite short, so I'll cut a good chunk off it to start with. Now if you've never done this before or you're just starting out, I'd recommend using a set of vernier calipers to measure exactly how much needs to be cut off, but I've done this a few times now so I'm comfortable doing it by eye. And once you cut the crown stem, it's a good idea to file the end of the crown stem just so you don't damage any threads inside that crown. Now we can refit the crown and test it in the case. And it looks like we're still a good 3 or 4mm too long. So what we're going to do now is pull the crown back out, chop about 3 or 4mm off this crown stem and retest it. And now it looks like we're on the money. The crown screws down all the way flush to the case and there's a nice bit of spring in the crown when it's in the pulled out position. So now time to remove the crown one last time and apply some Loctite to these threads just to make sure that it doesn't come loose unintentionally in the future. I use a medium strength Loctite just in case I need to service this item down the road. At least I know I can pull it apart if I need to. And once you've got that crown screwed on for the last time, make sure to wipe off any excess Loctite before putting it back into the case. Perfect. Now we can screw this crown down and move on to the next step, which is going to be sealing up this case. So to do that, let's grab our case back gasket and pop it in some silicone grease. The grease will help the case back go on nice and smoothly and act as a moisture barrier, helping to maintain the water resistance rating of this watch. Now there's a small groove in the back of the case that gasket sits in. Make sure it's located properly into that groove before fitting our case back. If it's not, you may pinch that gasket, which would compromise the water resistance rating of this watch. Now, after one last quick clean, let's seal this watch up. Always run the case back in by hand before locking it down tight with our case back tool. With our case back nice and tight, we can move on to the final step, which is fitting our bracelet. Now I'm using a two-tone Jubilee bracelet for this watch, and I think it's going to look awesome. So let's fit our spring bars into our bracelet end links, and then we can pop it into the case. Fitting the bracelet is as easy as locating each side of the spring bar into the hole in the lug. Once you've got the first side complete, flip it over, repeat the process, and then you've got a finished watch that you have built yourself. Now, if you're looking to take your watch modding to the next level and get more one-on-one support, head over to my Patreon, which will be linked in the description below. But now I cannot wait to see how this watch is going to look, so let's flip it over and see what we've made. And there we have it. I am really happy with how this one's turned out. I think it is a really classy looking watch, and the numerals on the dial are a real conversation starter. Now, if you've liked this video, gotten anything out of it at all, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you all in the next video.